Hi, thank you so much for joining us. Our Wednesday class of Who We Are, the 400 Years. And so we just want to say thank you. We have been out for a couple weeks, but grateful to be back so that we can pick up where we left off. So again, thank you so much for joining us, for those of you who are joining us in class, and also for those who will be viewing this video, this lesson, the teachings at a later date. So thank you so much for joining us. So we're going to go ahead and get into the lesson. And what I'm going to do is, because there's some changes going on with me in my whole setup, so I'm going to try to do this as best as I can. So I'm going to actually narrate as we view the PowerPoint presentation, because before I would teach and then we would go back and look at the presentation. But right now I'm going to have to go ahead and just pull up the presentation and narrate or teach, as we go along. So please bear with me and hopefully this will be good. So let's see how this is going to turn out. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get this started. Okay, so looking at the screen here, I'm not sure if someone can come off mute and let me know if you can see this bar here. Or do you just see my screen?
I see the screen. You're asking about a bar?
Yes, where it says you are sharing, your screen sharing.
No, we don't see that.
Okay, good, because I see it, but okay, good, great. So I wasn't sure if you would actually be able to see that screen. So let me go ahead and I am going to try my hardest, so you all bear with me. All right, thank you so much for coming off mute and answering that. So let's go ahead and get started. So just kind of recapping where we left off. The last class was on July 30th, so we're going to recap just to kind of pick up where we left off and kind of go into where we're going, right? Okay. And so as you can see here, of course, we always have to have this screen here, this image, which is the table of nations map according to Genesis chapter 10, because that is our reference scripture. And so everything that we're going to be talking about, of course, we refer back to Genesis chapter 10. So this is the land according to the table of nations in Genesis chapter 10, as you can see here. I always want to go back to this map because it helps us to get an understanding of where these, who is who in the Bible, according to Genesis chapter 10, where they are and all that good stuff. So we're just doing a recap right now, since we actually was out for about 3 weeks. And then we're going to pick up and move forward. So as you can see here in orange, this is the land of Ham, and we know that this is Africa. So Ham is Africa. This over here is Shem, and Shem is what is now Asia. It was Saudi Arabia, and then we know up here is Japheth, which is Europe. And so the three sons of Noah, according to Genesis chapter 10. So, and then as you can see here, we're going to go back and we're going to be talking about moving forward, we're going to be talking about the 12 sons of Jacob when they went over to Canaan land, the land flowing with milk and honey, the land that was promised to them, the divisions of the land, and all of that great stuff. And so basically wanted to just, show this map here. And then, of course, we have this one, which is the world as known to the Hebrews. So we're always going to show these first two maps, the world as known to the Hebrews, and also the table of nations map. And so as you can see here in this one, it has the red are the sons of Japheth, which is in red here, which is Europe, as I just mentioned. And then the sons of Ham is in yellow. And as you can see, Canaan is yellow here, which is also Africa. And then Shem is in blue, which is here. So you have the blue here. And then here it says other, and it says an Eber. So this is according to Eber, who is the descendant of Shem, right? Because we're talking about the children of Israel. We're talking about, this class is who we are and the 400 years. So it goes back to, linking us back up to the sons of Noah, connecting those who were always mixing and mingling, which were the Hamites and the Shemites. And so that's basically what we're looking at. And so here, just to kind of recap what we talked about last week, and if you have not had a chance to view this video, so this is when we talked, because the last lesson topic was, they left black and returned white. Okay, and so what do you mean by that, Samantha? So if you see here, the Israeli explaining that most people from today Israel were dark skinned. Okay, and so in 1958, this is not President Nasser of Egypt, the former president, but in 1958, the former president of Egypt, he had an interview in which he stated they left here black and came back white. Why? Because he was asked, when do you feel that Israel will be at peace, right? And so, as you can see here, one of the Israelis is saying the same. He's kind of saying the same thing, that the true Jews are what? They have a dark complexion. They're dark skinned. So anyone that's claiming to be, the true Israelites or children of Israel or the true Jews, that the original ones were dark and black, and they had the dusky type of skin and the dark skin tone. Okay, the complexion. And one of my a person actually commented on one of the videos and said, what is basically, and I'm just kind of like not verbatim what the person said, but what is my hang up on skin complexion? Well, it's not a hang up on skin complexion, it is just the truth. And so what we're doing is we're putting the truth out there of who we are. If you are identified by the color of your skin and you are over here in the Americas and you have no connection, you have no roots, you have no connection, you have no culture, there has been a huge division, you are identified as black or Black American, or once before Negro. And the derogatory term that they absolutely love is, you all know what that term is. And so what they don't understand is it's okay to be called a Negro, because that just placed me back. If someone say that I am a Negro, I'm going to say thank you. Why? Because that places me back of who I am and back to my roots. Why? Because my ancestors were brought over to the Americas on slave ships from Negro land. And so I'm okay with that. And, so that's what this class is about. And so when you say, why you hung up on complexion, it is just basically about getting the truth out there of who we are and who we are as a people from the 400 years. And that 400 years marked from August 20th, 1619, all the way to August 20th, 2019. That was the 400 years. So we're in, 400 plus years now. Okay. So just had another year added on August 20th. So the next one, so this slide right here is actually President Nasser of Egypt. And he said of the Jews and the Israelis that they left here black and came back white. And so basically, if you want to view this video, it's about a little over an hour long. And I highly recommend it so that you can, get a better understanding of what he's saying and why why he made that comment. So I'm going to slow down a little bit. And so just wanted to recap that. And so also what we talked about in our last lesson was, because we talked about the Hamites and the Semites, right? And so, I forgot, this is not the end of the slides, but we talked about the Hamites and the Semites. And so many people say, oh, it is the Semites that came over to the Americas, which I never dispute that. But I also would like to say that you cannot do away with the Hamites. And why you cannot do away with the Hamites is because of the simple fact is because Jacob, who is Israel, he had 4 wives. And yes, he did have 4 wives. He initially married Leah. 7 days later, he married Rachel. And then over the course of time, doing the birthing of his sons and his 1 daughter, because he has 12 sons and 1 daughter. So during the process of the birthing of his 13 children, he was given the maid servants, as you can see here, the name Zilpah and Bilhah, who are the maid servants, right? And so he was given the maid servant Zilpah, Bilhah. he was given them, they were given to him, and he took them as wives. Okay, so, and that's according to scripture. If you go back and read the scriptures, I believe it's starting at Genesis chapter 29. So if you go back in there, you can start reading that, where he actually, because Leah and Rachel gave him their maidservants, and he took them as wives first before he actually had intercourse with them, and they conceived. And as you can see here, both conceived 2 sons each, which make up the 12 sons of Israel. So just kind of, and so the reason why I say you can't do away with the Hamites and the Semites is because let's do a breakdown. And this is just kind of bring us up to speed of where we were and where we left off. So we want to go ahead and do this breakdown real quick. And then that's going to lead us into our next lesson. And so as you see here, this is the map, the 12 tribes of ancient Israel, and it's showing you here because we talked about the 12 sons and the land that was divided to them after they went over and they conquered the land of Canaan, right? Okay. As we say Canaan, his name is pronounced Canaan. And so what we talked about is, as I showed you in the last slide, how you can, when you say that, oh, it was the Semites, yes, we can say that if you're just looking at it from a standpoint of Israel, because he was Semitic. Why? Because he is a descendant of Shem. Okay. And so we can say that. However, what I am saying is, according to the Midrash, when it talks about who are these people in the Bible, we know and we have learned that Zilpah and Bilhah were children of the servants of Laban, who is Rebecca's brother, right? Her father is Nahor, Rebecca's brother, and Rebecca is the wife of who? Isaac. So you have Isaac and Rebecca, and they gave birth to Jacob and Esau. Okay, and then of course we know Jacob is Israel, right? And so when Jacob fled from his brother Esau because he stole his birthright, you all know the story. His mother told him, Rebecca said, to go to my brother. And when she sent him to her brother's Laban. And Laban is the father of Leah and Rachel, and he had servants, and the servants were Wathias and Iunis. And I'm sorry, I'm looking because I don't have my notebook, and I want to make sure I pronounce their name correctly. But those servants was, as you could, I guess you could say, they were a couple, husband and wife, and they had daughters, their daughters Zilpah and Bilhah, right? And so they are descendants of Canaan. So Wathias and Iunis, they are descendants of Canaan, who is the son of Ham. So they're descendants of Ham. So in other words, what are you saying, Samantha? They are Africa. Okay, so they are black. They are to be black, which that is what Ham's name means. So when I say that you can't do away with the Hamites, that brings in why I stand firm on that. Yes, that you have to see that when the children of Israel that were born, there was a mixture between the four wives of Jacob. And so we're going to look at that because we're talking about the breakdown of the sons. And so I believe this slide right here, I'm gonna actually, we talked about the splitting of the lands, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna lead into the design of the plan of God and how it connects to the 12 sons of Israel, to the 12 tribes. Okay. And when I say 12, we're taking away one. Okay, and you'll see what I mean by that. We're taking away one because Jacob had 12 sons and one daughter. But of course, according to scripture has to be fulfilled. And so you'll understand. And so basically we identified, let me go back to this slide here. We identified Leah and Rachel. They are Semitics because they are from Laban, who is a descendant of Shem, according to Genesis chapter 10. You see Shem in there, and then you go over to chapter 11, you can see the breakdown of the genealogy of Shem. And so you can't say they are Semitic. Jacob is Semitic. Why? Because he is a descendant of Shem. And as I stated, Bilhah and Zilpah are Hamitic. So when they say, oh, the Semitics, yes, we can agree, but let's do the breakdown of the children of Israel in order, according to Genesis chapter 29 and verses 31, and then going over to chapter 30 and all the way to verse 24, and then going over to chapter 35 and verses 16 through 18. And so what I mean by that is we're looking at the names here in order. So you have Reuben, his mom is Leah and his father is Jacob. So he is Semitic, okay? And so he is Semitic because they're both Semitic. You have Simeon, Levi, Judah, and Issachar, and Zebulun. They are all Semitic, right? But in order of the birth, it goes Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, right? And then after Judah, then came the sons of Bilhah. So she gave birth to Dan and Naphtali, and she is Hamitic. So now you have Bilhah, who is Hamitic, a descendant of Ham, and you have Jacob, who is a descendant of Shem. He is Semitic. So these two men, these two boys, the tribe, these sons are Semitic and Hamitic, okay? And so we're just looking at this by order of birth. And then after Dan and Naphtali, you have Gad and Asher that were born, because this is according to Genesis chapter 29, okay? I want to make that clear. Genesis chapter 29, starting at verse 31, and then going over to chapter 30, all the way up to verse 24, and then chapter 35, verses 16 and 18, okay? And so now you have Zilpah, who is Hamitic, right? She gives birth to Gad and Asher by Jacob. So you have Hamitic and Semitic. So these two tribes, these two sons, the tribe of Gad and Asher, are Semitic and Hamitic, okay? And so then you have Issachar, going back to Leah. She has Issachar, and then she has Zebulun, and she has Dinah, okay? And so you have Issachar and Zebulun. They are Semitic. Why? Because it's Semitic. Leah is Semitic. Jacob is Semitic. Dinah, the daughter, according to Genesis chapter 30, when Leah gave birth to her last child, she gave birth to a girl. And she is Semitic. So then you have, after Dinah, that's where Rachel finally gives birth to her two sons before she passed away. And so you have Joseph and Benjamin. Ben-Ani is actually what she named him, but his father changed his name to Benjamin. So before she passed away, she named him Ben-Ani. So his name was Ben-Ani. And then she passed away. Her soul left her, as the scripture says. And you can pick that up in Genesis chapter 35, verses 16 through 18. And so again, I will say that you can't do away with the Hamitic. And one thing that I always say is there has always been a mixing and mingling of the Hamites and the Shemites. And why do you say that, Samantha? Because it's in scripture. It's in scripture. There's always been a mixing and mingling. And how do we know that? Well, let's just look at the story of Judah and Tamar. Tamar is a Canaan. She's a descendant of Canaan. Judah is which is she's a descendant of Ham by way of Canaan. And then you have Judah, who is a descendant of Shem by way of who? Abraham, Isaac, and then his father Jacob. Okay, so there was always a mixing and mingling. And not only that, you also have Rahab the harlot. Let's talk about her. She was in the land of Canaan. She is a Canaanite as well. And who was she married to? If you go back and you read the book of Ruth, Rahab, because you hear of Rahab in the book of Joshua, right? Because she was the harlot that hid the spies. And I'm just kind of summarizing the story. So she was the harlot that hid the spies, and she helped them escape. And she told them, remember my family. And so when the children of Israel went in to attack, her family was saved, because they told her, if you put this, and I'm summarizing, this sash out, hanging out your window, we will know not to attack you and your, so everyone in your household that is in your house at that time will be saved. Okay, so we're not going to destroy them. We're not going to kill them. And so Rahab, she converted. She became a believer. And who did she marry? Rahab is the mother of Boaz. So go back and read the book of Ruth, and you will see where Rahab gave birth to Boaz. She was married to Salmon, and she gave birth to Boaz. Salmon is a Shemite. Why? Because he is Boaz's father, and they are from the 12, from Jacob. They are the descendants of Shem by way of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, who is Israel. Okay. And so, because if you go to Matthew chapter 1, the genealogy of Jesus Christ, you will see his name listed there. Okay. You'll see his name listed in the genealogy in Matthew chapter 1. And so there was always a mixing and mingling. And we can also go back to David and Bathsheba. Okay. So Bathsheba, she was a descendant of Ham by way of who? Canaan, right? Okay, so Bathsheba, and then you have David, who is a descendant of who? Israel, Jacob, by way of Boaz. He comes from that lineage, right? And then he also, his coming from Rahab, a Canaanite, and then you have his father is Jesse by way of who? By way of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then you have Judah, right? Okay, so there was always a mixing and mingling going on. And by way of who? Perez, the son Perez. So David is in that lineage of the son, the lineage of Judah and Tamar by way of their son Perez. The two sons that they had, Zerah and Perez, and you can also read that it's in Genesis chapter 38. So there was always a mixing and mingling of the Hamites and the Shemites. And so we cannot, to me, in my opinion, we cannot do away with the Hamites and, being a part of the 13 children of Jacob. Okay, so that's my take on it. And again, that is my opinion. And I am sticking with it. And why am I sticking with it? Because it's according to scripture. Okay, according to scripture. And as you all know me, many of you listening to my teachings, whether it's on, here Wednesday, our Wednesday class, who we are the 400 years, I am always going to stick as close to scripture as possible. Why? Because there is a disconnect. Okay, there is a disconnect. So what we're doing is we are connecting the dots of who we are in the 400 years. If you are identified by the color of your skin, who we are in the 400 years. And guess what? It's all in scripture. So you come against me, you're not coming against me. I don't care. And my mother always tell me, don't say that. That doesn't sound right. Well, guess what? I really don't. Because you're not coming against me. You're coming against scripture. Because what? The only thing I'm giving you is scripture. According to scripture. So thank you so much. I welcome, the comments. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Because guess what? The truth is coming out. The truth will be told. And that is what I am giving you. I am giving you the truth of the word of who we are, the ones who are identified by the color of their skin. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get off that soapbox. And we're going to go ahead and move forward. And so what I would like to do is leading up to connecting the 12 sons of Israel, the 12 tribes, and there's -1, but +1. Samantha, that don't sound right. So we have 12. Jacob had 12 sons. The land was divided amongst his 11 sons, but then plus you have one that was his portion was given to his sons. And who was that? Joseph, who is the son of Rachel, and Jacob, who is Israel, right? Okay, so we're going to do the breakdown. And because this is very lengthy, I will say to you, I'm going to summarize. And I will say to you, when you get a chance between now and our next class, go back and read these passages that I'm going to share with you tonight. And the reason why I'm not going to read them is because it's so long. So I'm just going to tell you the passage and I'm going to give you the scriptures. But this is talking about the conquest. So I'm giving you the conquest of Moses, Moshe, and Joshua, who is Yeshua. Um, because why the J sounds like a Y, right? Okay. So we're going to go to the next slide here, and this is where we come in of the land. So we're showing you like the divisions of the land after the children of Israel went over into where Canaan land, and it was something that really um, caught my eye today, which I'm going to share at a later date. Is very interesting. And what I mean by that is because people always want to say, and I'm just going to kind of give you a little teaser here. If you go to, I believe it's oh my gosh, I cannot remember the scripture off the top of my head, but we all know about the lady. They said the Gentile shows her faith according to the scriptures in Matthew and Mark. And you know what? And I'm the type of person, because of the simple fact that when I mention something, I always want to make sure that I try to give you at least the scriptures. So let me get this for you real quick without having, because my Bible and my notes are not here with me, right? Okay. And so we know the scripture comes from Mark chapter 7. So if you look at Mark chapter 7 and also Matthew chapter 21, it talks about the Gentile woman. She shows her faith, right? And so um, the reason why I want to bring this up is because a lot of people say, well, she was a Gentile, so she is from Canaan, so the Canaanites are Gentiles, which is absolutely not true. And the reason why I say that is absolutely not true is because Jesus is a descendant of Canaan. So if Canaan was a Gentile, then so is Jesus. Doesn't that make sense? Wouldn't that make sense? Should that make sense? Okay, so if you want to say that the Canaanites are Gentiles, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. Why? Because the scripture tells us in Genesis chapter 10, verses 2 through 5, and it specifically identifies who the Gentiles are. So if you get a chance, if you're saying, wait a minute, Samantha, go back and look at the other videos that I have posted on, my channel here. You can go back and look at the other lessons, the first lessons where we did the breakdown of who the Gentiles are. And the Gentiles are the descendants of Japheth, right? And so if you look at Mark chapter 7, and I'm going to go there because I brought it up, so I have to. So you all bear with me for just 1 second. So Mark chapter 7, and the reason why I'm saying this is because I'm just proving a point here. So, and I'm looking this up because for some reason, I don't know why I didn't bring my notes and my Bible in here with me. So Mark chapter 7, and it goes from verse 24 to verses 24 through 30. So Mark chapter 7, verses 24 through 30. And what it says here is, from there he arose and went to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And he entered a house and wanted no one to know. But I'm reading from the New King James Version, and I omit the italic, because omitting the italic, if it's italic in my Bible, that means it was added later after the original translation. Okay, from the Greek, Hebrew, and Latin. And it says here, I'm going to skip down to. Well, let me go. It says, from there he arose and went to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And he entered a house. I'm reading verse 24 of Mark chapter 7. And he entered a house and wanted no one to know, but he could not be hidden. For a woman whose young daughter had an unclean spirit heard about him, and she came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek, okay? And so she was a Greek, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she kept asking him to cast the demon out of her daughter. But Jesus said to her, "Let the children be filled first, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw to the little dogs." Jesus said, verse 27, it said, "But Jesus said to her," this is what Jesus said. So he said, "It's not, let the children be filled." And who is he saying? Because he's there for the children of Israel, the lost sheep of Israel. Okay, that's what he is saying to her. And why did he say it's not? He said, "For it is not good to take the children's bread and throw to the little dogs," because she was a Gentile, a Greek, a Syrophoenician. And she answered and said to him, "Yes, Lord, yet even the little dogs eat the table, even the little dogs under the table eat from the children's crumbs." So in other words, the dogs going, if the crumbs from the children fall, the dogs are going to get it. She had a very valid point. And why? Because of course, Jesus, he said he was going to pour out his spirit on all, God said he was going to pour out his spirit on all flesh. When Jesus went to the cross and he was crucified, it was to redeem man, and he shed his blood for the sin of the world. Okay. So then they were grafted in. So here I wanted to show you that. Why? Because and we when I was doing my research today, and I came across, I said, this is so interesting how God is just pulling things up for me going into, as we go further into our lessons, digging in deeper. Why? Because on one of the maps that I looked up, it shows, it actually shows you the division of the land, and it shows you where it pinpoints where the Syrophoenicians were. So they were in that area, but she was not a Canaanite. She was in the area near Canaan. And so when Jesus was in there, he went into the regions of Tyre. Okay. So going into those regions, why? Because the children of Israel, because where they after the lands had been divided, it was divided in Canaan's land. Canaan is not a Gentile. He's not a Gentile. And you got to remember back then, it's different from how the lands are divided today. That's what I will say. And I'm going to leave it at that. But if anyone, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop a comment, and I promise you, I will get back with you. So I wanted to point that out because it said the woman was a Greek. She was a Greek. She was not a Canaanite. She was of Canaan because she lived in the area of where they were. Okay. But she was not a Canaanite. So when they say, "Oh, the Canaanites are Gentiles," that's a lie. And again, I dispute that because scripture lets us know that Jesus is a descendant of who? Judah and Tamar. Okay. So that's why I said it was always a mixing and mingling going on with the Hamites and the Shemites. You cannot do away with the Hamites and only say, "Oh, it's Semitic." You just can't. You can if you want to, but it just doesn't make sense. Why? Because as we just showed you here, the children, as you can see here, they are descendants of who? Shem and Ham. Okay, they're descendants of Shem and Ham. So, okay, now let me get out of that soapbox. Okay, all right. So breakdown. So what we're going to be looking at now, and I believe this is my slide number 6. You all bear with me because I'm not used to all of this. I'm used to having multiple monitors. So right now I'm limited to just my laptop because of some changes that's going on in my home. So we have here the breakdown of Moses and Joshua's conquest of the land of Canaan according to scripture. As I said before, I'm going to stick as close to scripture as possible, because I want to make sure that we are getting the truth of the word, right? We're getting the truth of the word. And I am over time, but we did get started a little late. So I'm going to go ahead and run through these scriptures, give you the passage, and show you how these things were divided. The land of Canaan was divided up amongst the children of Israel, right? Okay. And you can read that starting at, it's going to go from Joshua chapter 10 all the way to, let me see. Actually, we're going to go up to 21. So Joshua chapter 10 all the way through 21. So when you get a chance, please go back and read those so you won't be like, oh, you just take my word for it. No, scripture says study, show thyself approved. So that's what I want you to do. Study that word, okay? All right. And so the breakdown of Moses and Joshua's conquest of the land of Canaan, according to scripture, starting in Joshua chapter 10. So you have Joshua chapter 10, verses 28 through 43, the conquest of the South land. Joshua chapter 11, verses 1 through 15, it talks about the northern conquest, okay? Joshua chapter 11, verses 16 through 23 is the summary of Joshua's conquest. And then you have going over to Joshua chapter 12, starting at verses 1 through 6, it talks about the kings that were conquered by Moses. Okay, because remember, Moses was before he passed away, because God told him, you will not cross over into the promised land because of something that he did, his disobedience. He struck the rock twice, and he was only supposed to strike it once. Okay, so God told him he will not see. He let him, took him on top of the mountain, let him see it, but he said, you will not enter, because at that time, the children of Israel, they were wandering in the wilderness, and God was preparing to take them over into the promised land, that land flowing with milk and honey, which is the land of Canaan. Okay. And so we have Joshua 12, verses 1 through 6, kings conquered by Moses. Verses 7 through 24, the kings conquered by Joshua. Okay, because then Joshua was Moses' successor. He was the one that came in and after Moses passed away. So going into Joshua chapter 13, verses 1 through 7 is the remaining lands to be conquered. So you can read that there. And then verses 8 through 14, and that's where the land begins to be divided east of the Jordan. Okay, so it shows, if we look here, we're going to talk about the land that's going to be divided. We got southwest, north, south, north, south, east, west. I guess I did that right. Okay. So the land that was divided and how it was divided. Okay. As you can see here, all of the signs of Israel, but what you do not see is Joseph. So we'll talk about that as well. Why? Because according to the scripture, Joseph received a double inheritance with his sons, who is Ephraim and Manasseh. So going back, Joshua chapter 13, verses 8 through 14, the land divided east of the Jordan. And then it says verses 15 through 23 is the land of Reuben. So there's Reuben. So these are the lands that is divided east of the Jordan. This is Reuben's land. And then you have Joshua chapter 13, 24, verses 24 through 28, the land of Gad. And it says in same chapter, verses 29 through 33, half the tribe of Manasseh east. Why? Because you got east, Manasseh has land east, and he also has land west, which is over here. Okay, so half of his tribe east. Okay, and then you have Joshua chapter 14, verses 1 through 5, the land divided west of the Jordan. So this is what we're going to start talking about, the divisions of this land. So this is the land divided east of the Jordan. We have right there. And then here it is, the land divided west of the Jordan, west of the Jordan. So we have Joshua chapter 14, 1 through 5, the land divided west of the Jordan. Verses 6 through 15, Caleb inherited Hebron. Why? Because Caleb was also one of the ones who fought alongside Joshua. So he received an inheritance. Okay. You can read that in chapter 14, verses 6 through 15. Caleb inherits Hebron. And then going to chapter 15, verses 1 through 12, the land of Judah. So the land of Judah is divided. Joshua 16, so going to Joshua, and then it says, Joshua 15, verses 13 through 19, Caleb occupies Hebron and Debir. He, again, because he fought alongside, so he inherited land because, God allowed him to inherit land. And if you go back in scriptures and read Judges, the book of Judges, Caleb was a Canaanite. He was not a Hebrew. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because they were identified as Hebrews before, right? During this time, when they were doing the divisions of the land, they were identified as Hebrews. They were not identified as Jews or Samaritans. Okay. All right. Okay. So where did I leave off? Joshua 15:13 through 19, Caleb occupies Hebron and Debir. And then Joshua 15:20 through 63, the cities of Judah. So then you'll see it tells you all of the cities of Judah. And that's why I'm using this one, because you're going to see, if you go back and read it, you're going to see some of these names listed in the scriptures. Okay. And so then going to chapter 16, verses 1 through 4, Ephraim and West Manasseh, right? So you have Manasseh west and you have Ephraim. They are the sons of Joseph. So that's why you do not see Joseph's name on here. And that's why I say 12 minus 1 plus 1. Why? Because you also do not see Levi's name on here. Okay. And I'm gonna tell you why you do not see Levi's name on here. So you do not see Joseph. Why? Because his son occupied land in his stead. So his double portion, he'll have a portion amongst his above his brothers. He will have a portion above his brothers. Why? Because Ephraim, Manasseh is the firstborn, so he will take the place of Joseph. But his portion above is who? Ephraim. Verses 5 through 10 in Joshua 16, the land of Ephraim. And then you have going over to Joshua chapter 17, verses 1 through 13, the other half, tribe of Manasseh west. And then you have 14 through 18, more land for Ephraim and Manasseh. So they get more land, the sons of Joseph. Now going over to chapter 18, verses 1 through 10, the remainder of the land divided. So let's talk about how the remainder of the lands was divided west of the Jordan, and also, as we can see, going up north, and we have south, right? Okay, so we got north, south, west, and east. Chapter 18, verses 11 through 28, the land of Benjamin. As you can see, Benjamin is right here. And then going over to chapter 19, verses 1 through 9, Simeon, inheritance with Judah. And remember this one, the reason why he's down, although Simeon was a part of the northern kingdom, he's down here because of the prophecy according to, let me see, let me go back, Genesis, it's Jacob. His prophecy, Genesis chapter 49, verses 5 through 7. So I wanted to get that across. So and it says, Simeon and Levi, brothers, instrument of cruelty, their dwelling place, let not my soul enter their council. Let not my honor be united in their assembly, for in their anger they slew a man. And what is he talking about? The men that they slew according to the Dinah incident, going back to Genesis chapter 34. And you can read that verses 25 through 31. And so he says, for in their anger they slew a man, and their self-will they hamstrung an ox. Cursed their anger, not cursed their sons, but their anger, cursed their anger for fears, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. So why is Levi scattered in Israel? And why is Simeon, is he is scattered? Because he's down here, although he was a part of the northern kingdom. Okay. Because the southern kingdom, according to 1 Kings chapter 12 and chapters 11 and 12, you have the splitting of the kingdom. The splitting of the tribe, the kingdom of Israel, which is the northern kingdom, and the kingdom of Judah, which is the southern kingdom. The kingdom of Judah was just two tribes, which was Benjamin and Judah, and then the rest of them was the northern kingdom, which was the kingdom of Israel. Okay. So wanted to tell you why, because Samantha, why is Simeon down there? Okay, so then you have Benjamin right here. And then, of course, we talk about Simeon's inheritance, going back to Joshua chapter 19, verses 1 through 9, Simeon's inheritance with Judah. And then verses 10 through 16, the land of Zebulun. And so we see Zebulun is right here because this is the division of the lands west of the Jordan. So Zebulun is here. And then verses 17 through 23, you have Issachar, which is right here. And then verses 24 through 31, the land of Asher, which is here. And then you have 32 through 39, the land of Naphtali, which is here. And then you also have the land of Dan, 19 verses 40 through 48, and Dan is here. And then you have Joshua's inheritance. So Joshua, just the same as Caleb, receives an inheritance. Joshua receives an inheritance as well. And that is in Joshua chapter 19, verses 49 through 51. And so then if you go over to Joshua chapter 21, okay, because then in 20, it tells you about, everything like the completions of the division. So go back and read it, as I said, chapters 10 all the way through 21 when you get a chance in Joshua. So Joshua 21 verses 1 through 42, it talks about the cities of the Levites, okay? And that's why you do not see Levi's name on here, although he is a son, right? He's the daughter of Leah and Jacob. He's a son of Leah and Jacob, right? Okay. So he does not have a land here. Why? Because his inheritance comes from God, according to the scriptures, okay? And so, and you can read that where Moses says that his land is divided, his land, the inheritance of land for Levi is given to him. His inheritance is from God. Okay. Another reason why is because Levi is the priesthood. The Levitical priesthood. And so Joshua 21, 1 through 42, the cities of Levi, and then verses 43 to 45, the promise fulfilled. Okay. So the promise was fulfilled according to what God said to Abraham, that he was going to give his descendants that land. And he also let Jacob know as well that his seed was going to have, what did he say to Abraham? A land flowing with milk and honey. He said, in this land, he took him to the land. He said, this land I'm going to give to your descendants. And he also let Isaac know, and also Jacob, who is Israel, and that land is Canaan's land. Okay. And so if we go to, so you have the divisions of the land, and then we're going to go to, so this slide here is just the historical, and I know you can't really see and read all of those or what have you, but it is the historical map of the divisions of the land. Okay. And so what I want to show you here, I know we're over by 2 minutes. I'm getting ready to shut this down. This concludes it. And so what I would like you to do is go back and read chapters and Joshua chapters 10 through 21, because then I'm going to take you over into what we're going to talk about Balaam's view and his vision that was given to him according to Numbers chapter 22, verses starting at verse 41, going over to chapter 23 up to verse 12. And so I wanted to make sure I show you, because the importance of the divisions of the land, going back here, understanding who they are, okay, going back here, and then the vision that God gave Balaam according to his plan, and how the sons of Israel link up to the cross. Okay, so how they link up to the cross. So I'm not going to show you that last slide again. So I just wanted to show you that. And so next week, please join us next week. We will start that breakdown and go over the significance of the cross and how the 12 sons of Israel connects to that cross. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. And I'm going to say to you, thank you so much for those of you who have joined us. Thank you so much. And until next time, we'll see you all next week. So I'm going to stop the recordings here. Thank you for listening in on the lesson.